I'll try to package content in a special way to make this video very unique and set up people to implement Agile hardware by using Agile Kata. I think our collaboration in this video is going to be really powerful. And let me try to explain why. The screen I'm sharing right now is a zoomed out view of the certified Scrum Master class I teach with the Scrum Alliance certification. Now, Tesla has no Scrum. SpaceX has no Scrum. The Musk companies don't use any Scrum at all. So why do I choose to teach Scrum Alliance classes? I believe they're an excellent stepping path towards Tesla speed. And the Musk companies are at the extreme end of speed of innovation. I've never seen anything faster at innovating anywhere in the world. Most companies aren't that fast yet. So how do they move towards it? And what they'll do is implement the steps I'm about to try to show using Agile Kata. So this is how specifically to get to Tesla speed in hardware, but also software and business management. Whatever the weak link, the slowest part of the company is, would slow down everybody. So really, you'd implement these practices all across. But I'll try to make the hardware story clear in right about 15 minutes. So I think I'm the only one that teaches a certified Scrum Master class as a bridge towards Tesla speed. So I add a lot of additional content in addition to covering the required content. Well, then why use a Scrum Alliance credential at all? When I search Glassdoor or LinkedIn or Agile, the most requested credential, and there are many Agile credentials, the most requested credential is the Scrum Alliance credentials. So I follow the market. I go to the credential the businesses understand. And this is why I choose to use the Scrum Alliance. The most open job postings request Scrum Alliance credentials. So I have built on what's required by the Scrum Alliance to put what you would really need if you were going to go work for Elon Musk or operate your company as if Elon Musk were operating the company. Here's what I mean. I'll zoom in on the first level Scrum Alliance class, the certified Scrum Master class. And I already have a tip from Tesla. Tesla tip, what is faster than Agile? Advanced Agile companies like Tesla do not use the Scrum roles anymore. There are no product owners. There are no Scrum Masters. We don't call developers only developers as if it's a role or accountability either. Instead, the teams self-organize around projects and share the responsibilities. Governments require some roles, like a health and safety officer and plant manager. Tesla employees rotate through who is playing these roles, sometimes changing more than once in a week or even in a day. Anyone can play these roles if they have completed the training. The training is provided by apps on everyone's phones. This keeps the company feeling flat, where anyone feels they can do anything. Employees are measured automatically by software called digital self-management. There are no performance reviews or promotions that I ever experienced. Now, it does seem there are some performance reviews and some promotions, but they seem much less common and much less important than any company I've ever worked in. And the next piece of information here is why I think that is. Employees make more money from stock options. Many employees have more than $1 million US and continue working at the company because they enjoy the work and are passionate about the company mission. Now, these two pictures are actually the two Teslas, well, two of the three Teslas that I've owned. So this is Lenny. This is one of the very first Model 3s that I converted into a race car while I was a Tesla employee. And this is one of the first Tesla Model S plaids ever made. This is Sonic. I actually own Sonic now, and Sonic is being listed for sale this week. Sonic has been modified with a full race road legal package. This is absolutely the highest possible acceleration, braking, and grip that is possible in a United States road legal package, which I designed myself with information I learned as an employee of the company. I'm really proud of those cars. So I have these tips, and then I go way beyond the Scrum Alliance required content by even in the first level class introducing hashtag MobAI, which is the method for doing all work in a Musk company. This is what I observed at SpaceX. This is what I experienced at Tesla. From what I can tell, this is how the Boring Company and Neuralink and X also operate. And we do it together in every course I teach, even starting with the most simple. Tesla Mob AI. At Tesla, all work is group work, or I'll say mob work, coming from flash mob, where it looks like a disorganized, random group and something choreographed and beautiful emerges from it. We would mob emails, contracts, programming, 3D drawing, even physical work like assembling robots and building cars. Many companies do the agile events. The Musk companies don't do any agile events anymore, none of the agile events. But many companies do, such as retrospective and refinement in mob. Some events, such as daily stand-up or daily scrum, can be skipped if we mob more than 1 hour a day. Mob works with any composition of skill. All new people are highly creative. Mob is ideal for 3 to 5 people. If mobs make modules or services that connect, they choose to work within 3 meters of each other. I recommend remote work, remote mobs, remote mob AI. In-person mobs are approximately 2% faster. That's my estimate. However, physical work, such as what Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, the Boring Company are doing, must be in person. And X.com is virtual work, but they still do in-person work because it's approximately 2% faster. And Elon is aiming for the absolute peak output. Now, if you went up the progression and after a certified Scrum Master course, joined a product owner course, we would then talk about the next piece that SpaceX and Tesla use to get the speed they get, including in hardware. And that's modularity. Now, I learned how to really do hardware modularity in my own car company, Wikispeed, that was founded in 2006. And I didn't start consulting to Tesla until 2010. The idea of modularity, there are many ways to split hardware or software. There are few ways that produce many pieces that can be built and tested in any order or at the same time. This is modular architecture. The entire team works with, if you're using Scrum, a product owner. Tesla, SpaceX don't have product owners anymore. They're too fast for that. But as mentioned, I think Agile methods are a bridge towards, and I think using Agile Kata, as you'll hear in a few minutes, is how you'd move up this progression. This is modular architecture. The entire team works with, if you have a product owner, the product owner. If not, you'd work with Elon, the business owner, to continually resplit the product so each team has their own module. Modular architecture. A agile hardware product is partitioned into parallel executable modules that can be designed, analyzed, built, tested, and deployed in 30 days or less. Modules are a major factor in Wikispeed's ability, and now Tesla and SpaceX and other companies' ability to release hardware within 30 days. In a Musk company's case, multiple times in 1 day. This comes from Justice's Law, which I authored in 2006. That is to self-organize teams for each module. And the goal is for these teams to be as independent as possible. What we don't want are shared teams, company as a service teams. That creates a queue or a wait state. So each of these modules has its own procurement. They have their own embedded software development, if needed, their own app development, their own mechanical engineering, their own fabrication. They're like their own company. Elon describes Tesla as a collection of more than 100 startups. That matches my experience very much inside the company. There's more information on modularity, but this video is a brief introduction so you know what your steps are to move towards. And of course, we'll do Mob AI in a more detailed format in the product owner class, and we'll talk about Agile finance, Agile contracts, other things I would expect someone with a product owner expertise to take on. That then takes us to our advanced certified product owner course. In the Advanced Certified Scrum Product Owner course, I add what you would need to do to convert your skill set from a project manager or a program manager or a product manager into something that could perform inside a Musk company, where you truly own a business unit like a startup, including its finances and its KPIs. And we introduce in more detail the Justice Board, where each module of your product has automated reporting of how much money it's spending and how quickly its KPIs are improving, which tells everyone in real time how much the company is spending for a KPI to go up. And that gives you an at a glance view of the financial efficiency of your company. And this is necessary if you're going to make quick decisions, within a day decisions about budget. So now you're getting to real-time budgeting in the Advanced Product Owner class. And that takes us to the Advanced Scrum Master class. And this is our most clear connection to Agile Kata. Yes, in addition to coaching skills, mentoring skills, facilitation skills, what we would expect someone that's an advanced facilitator, an advanced coach to be able to perform, we navigate frameworks. Faster releases are always better. Not every leader, not every company, not every owner is ready to make all the necessary changes in order to get to the fastest frameworks. Identify the fastest framework that your leaders will support, or if you're the company owner, the fastest framework that you're willing to implement. If your company is budgeting once a year or less, you have annual budgets or longer, then the slower frameworks are actually the best fit for you. If your company is budgeting and re-budgeting without penalty, without an out-of-band budget process every 30 to 90 days, then some of the medium speed Agile frameworks will be a good fit for you. If your company is budgeting in less than 30 days without penalty, without out-of-band reallocation of money, and this is already very rare around the world, you're in very rare territory. That is where some of the quicker Agile frameworks are finally going to be useful to you. It is not useful to do most of these frameworks if you're not allowed to change based on learning in less than 30 days. And this is a common frustration point for many Agile implementations, causing perceived failure, a disconnect between budget speed and the framework attempted iteration or learning cycle. Now, if you're Elon, you want to be iterating the fastest. Pace of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run, in hardware and software, in business operations. So if you're Elon, you're reallocating budget multiple times a day. And there's no Agile framework that's fast enough for that. I've never seen anything fast enough for that except what I experienced working for Elon. And Elon doesn't name it anything. Elon's not about teaching frameworks. So I call my understanding of that Joe DX. I want to call it the Musk model, but only Elon should publish something called the Musk model. So I will say my limited understanding, my best understanding of how Elon operates companies would be Joe DX, Joe digitalization and implementation. That's the DX. And that is appropriate only if you're making non-penalty reallocation of capital in less than a day. In Elon's case, it's actually real time, multiple times a day. And that takes us to Joe DX. This is absolutely the most advanced thing I teach. It's online in June, and I do a road show in Europe in late spring and then in autumn where there's some live events. And that's where Joe Krebs and I work together. Thank you so much, Joe Krebs. Moving up this ladder is what you will use Agile Kata to win. And I'll zoom in on a piece of the 12-step model of Joe DX. I'm able to teach it in just a day, especially if you've already taken Scrum Master from me, the content I put in, Advanced Scrum Master, Certified Scrum Master, Product Owner, Advanced Certified Scrum Master. Here is Elon's goal, which makes all of this fit. The goal is for 100% of staff to be engineers, directly improving the products and services. Amazingly, this process works in automotive at Tesla. The most sold car in 2023 worldwide is the Tesla Model Y. Pure software at X, the most downloaded app in the world, is now X. And it's also the top news app. It has the most new users of any social media app, etc. Construction at the Boring Company, medical devices at Neuralink, and aerospace at SpaceX. The most launches of any aerospace company in the world in 2023 was SpaceX. SpaceX made 1,000 hardware changes to the world's largest rocket in 69 days. So how? Yes, we're using the fastest framework, if you can even call it a framework, and I'll say JODX is my understanding of that. Yes, there's modularity. Yes, there's real-time budgets using an equivalent of a justice board. Every piece I've talked about. And then, because this also works in hardware, there is extreme manufacturing. That's the other piece, which is taught here in JODX, which also gives you an Agile hardware developer certification. XM, or extreme manufacturing, is the method of factory production to innovate quickly and produce new designs every day. XM solves the top 11 reasons that hardware development cycles are delayed. The 11 extreme manufacturing principles solve each problem. These are listed in more detail in my book, Scrum Master. There's a chapter on Agile Hardware XM. These are in the JODX class, which you can take online in June if you're interested in, and then you could even be certified in it. Some organizations require certifications to release budget to you. So although I think the certification is only valuable if you think it's valuable, your training group may require that in order to fund a course. I'd love to see you online. Now you have the overall steps. Yes, there's plenty of detail, but that's why the classes exist, to go into that detail. You can find all of these at abi-agile.com. Here's my QR code with all my information and the online link for the courses. But you already have the roadmap you need to move up the framework's rainbow. Shorter budgeting cycle, shorter inspect and adapt cycle, faster release cycle, faster pace of innovation. Now that you have the steps, how do you do it? And this is why I'm so lucky that Joe Krebs and I have found each other, because Agile Kata is an incredibly simple, functional method to move up the progression of steps. Joe, if you're ready, please share with everyone how to implement Agile Kata.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. I couldn't have said it better, Joe. I'm lucky that we found each other too in the world of agile frameworks and patterns and methodologies and everything. There's two things that fit very well. And that's where the Agile Kata comes into the mix. I started developing the idea of an Agile Kata starting in 2018. And I can go back a little bit in time here just to give you a little bit of context of where this is going. But I cannot even second what Joe just said about Scrum as a foundation for that. I myself, just like Joe, I'm a certified professional Scrum trainer with not the Scrum Alliance, but with the Scrum.org. But regardless of that, it's an absolute clear statement that Scrum is a wonderful process framework. And it's a wonderful process framework for some organizations to start. But there might be a moment where some teams pull away and say, like, we want to add something to this framework, or we want to change something about this framework. We'll get to that and why that might actually make sense for some. And that's where the Agile Kata also comes into the mix. 2018, I started formulating some ideas around this, and that was the result of years and years before going through agile transformations. And the repeating question was always how to transform an organization towards agility. What's the tool for that? And there were so many unanswered questions that I kept digging. At some point, I came across some literature and I started formulating what now is Agile Kata. And we're organizing ourselves now. Just like Joe said, some organizations need certifications around certain work. And that's why agilekata.pro exists, where you can take some certification assessments and obviously a training that goes along with it. The training is really the key thing here for this. But yeah, so let me just walk you a little bit through some of those ideas, how this all started. Well, It actually all started with something like habit changes, right? We all have habits. Every single day we're going through certain habits, how you drive to work, how do you brush your teeth, how you possibly what you eat. There are certain habits, they're repetitive, they're very repetitive. We can also say how we fold our arms, right? So that is also a habit. If you're trying to fold your arms the opposite way, you will notice it feels uncomfortable. It feels weird. These are like typical answers we hear when we ask questions like to students. It's like, how does it feel to fold the other arms? It's weird, right? When you ask them about transformations, how does it feel to do agile? They say weird. So these are habits, right? So what we noticed were that these kind of agile ways of working were certain habits. And some habits are good and some habits are possibly questionable. And those are the ones we want to change, right? For example, in New Year's, we see a wonderful opportunity for habit change. So we say, I want to do this different. I want to do this different. But then we fall very often shortly after the new year has started. And there's a reason for that because the goals might be too big. We have in the beginning of the year, and maybe we don't have a concrete, small actionable step to get there. And that's where we found agile transformations were also going in the exact same directions that we felt we were going to go through habits. The habits were waterfall plans, organizing and transformation, and so forth. So that was the idea. Now, why do habits exist? Because habits are hardwired, really deeply hardwired in our brains, right? So because we're going to execute that, we conserve energy. We are just going to do the same things over and over again. Can you change them? Yes. And there are tools out there, and one of them is the Agile Kata, where you can utilize Kata, at least in the beginning of the implementation, to change that kind of habit over time. And those are the routines, right? And what we found out is that even though we were first initially interested in transformations, that kata is actually a universal pattern for continuous improvement of agility. So at the beginning, the starting point was really very isolated. We were focused on transformations. There was so much going wrong. You can see some of when you go on agilekata.org, you see a white paper. It was really focused on agile transformations and what we did wrong in the 2014, 15, 16. So many waterfall organized transformations. And the irony here is that we expect out of a waterfall transformation an agile organization to emerge. And that is obviously silly. So we found like there's got to be a better way. And we stumbled across several books. One of them is obviously Standard Setting, Mike Rother's 2009 published Toyota Kata. That was the starting point. And Mike really put this thinking pattern together, which I'm about to show you. And that is the one that we're going to use to plug in what Joe just said before what kind of changes we can actually make. 2013, there was even a Kata reference in the Phoenix Project. So if you have read the Phoenix Project, because a lot of people have read that, there is actually a part of the story. Obviously, this is like a storyline book. What part of the story is Kata, where somebody actually goes back into the office and says, why don't we try something called Kata? So even in 2013, lots of people read about it through the Phoenix Project, but it didn't stick so much. 2018, Melissa Perry released the book, The Build Trap. Also there was a concrete example about Kata in product management. So we see different kind of things like Mike on the cultural side and value side. We see the Phoenix Project's DevOps and continuous improvement. And here we see Kata being used as a pattern to actually build products and prototypes. So it's super interesting stuff. And so obviously that all led to us to believe that there is more than just a pattern for transformation. In 2020, Jeffrey Liker released the Toyota Way, a second edition. And if you're familiar with the 4 Ps, which were part of the first edition of the book, they have now a core in the middle of it, and that is called scientific thinking. And that is being achieved, for example, through Kata. So even Kata made it into one of the most best-selling books in the lean bookshelf as an idea. So it's not something we have created out of the blue. This has been going on for a long time. And there is a lot of evidence out there that this tool can help us. Now, the Agile Kata in a nutshell here, which I would love to show you and obviously spark some interest here in it, is that a kata is really a sequence of steps, and it is extremely simple sequence of steps because it's 4 steps only. And those 4 steps are being organized in a very specific way. And over time, the more often we go through this routine, through this pattern, we will actually start noticing behavioral change. And that behavioral change could be towards agility. Now, if you're thinking about you doing Scrum, for example, because Joe kicked it off this way, right? So using the Scrum framework as Joe outlined in his mural, we could say, hey, here is Scrum. We're working with Scrum, but we want to work possibly with marketing departments differently, right? So we're an IT organization and we want to work with our marketing department, or with sales, we want to work different, or with procurement. There's also Joe DX, there's also contract and vendors and et cetera. So there's a lot of intersections between departments, but it could be just Scrum, where a team says, we want to improve our existing Scrum. So, and what are the directions and what is the challenge? So the first step goes actually further out and actually says, what's your goal? What's your direction? Where do you want to go? What's your challenge you're currently facing? Now, that is not improving agility or introducing an agile transformation or something like that. That would be too big for an organization. So we're breaking this down into somewhat up to 9 months, maybe 12 time frames. So we don't want to go too long. So this is not a vision. This is more like a direction. It should be an audacious goal, right? It should be something that where the teams feel like, I don't know if we're going to achieve this. It might not be achievable, right? But it's a challenge. It's the word contains it, right? So it's not something like we know exactly how to get. Well, this is a challenge. And I could, just when Joe was talking about the Tesla organization years back, I was like, that is exactly what this is, right? A challenge within an organization was like, let's try something. Let's be brave and let's courageous and let's try something. And that is really the first step in our sequence. And now comes the genius move in this Mike Rother's improvement kata, which is the core of the Agile Kata, is to actually say, instead of just looking forward and then going afterwards, there comes a scientific step that says, hey, why don't you step back and see where you currently are? Grasp the current condition. Find out where you currently are. So many organizations don't do that, right? So they go into an agile transformation, business agility, or even introducing Scrum or any agile process into the organization. It's just, let's do it. There's like an immediate action plan. But it's good to step back and say where you currently are, because later down the road, you want to measure somehow. Is this all very effective for us in the organization or not? Should we make some further tweaks? So you see in the timeline, we're actually stepping back. And this is the beauty of what we just said about Scrum is like, if a team has already started with Scrum and they want to possibly make some changes in speed of how they want to operate and increase a higher degree or achieve a higher degree of agility, that is a huge step, because grasping the current condition for a Scrum team is Scrum. Yeah, believe it or not, that is Scrum, right? So when a Scrum team says we want to get started with Agile Kata, they're not going to start from scratch. No, you're starting with Scrum. So they're making a step forward. And that is exactly what that stepping stone Joe was mentioning earlier is. So now we are in grasping the current condition. So now we know where we are. And there is a huge delta between where we want to go and where we currently are. The Agile Kata says, well, this is too much to digest from going from the current condition to the challenge. So let's break things down into smaller pieces, very much in the mindset with agility. What's your next target condition? Now, this is not a plan. Look at the words very carefully. These are two conditions. These are states. So we're saying like, hey, I'm in this current state, and here's my next small step I can take to achieve that state. And that is my step number 3, followed by step number 4, which is, and that is to bridge the step between the current condition and the target condition. And that is a series, and you see that loop around that number 4. It is a rotating thing. These are PDCA cycles. So we're doing a ton of experimentations here. We experiment to step 3. And by doing so, we're learning a ton. So you're being in a learning organizations, because teams are now saying, we are currently here. We would love to achieve that small step that leads us closer to our challenge. And let's experiment around that a little bit and learn from it. It's a bumpy road. You see that line between 2 and 3 is bumpy. And that's very normal in the world of experimentation. Some experiments work and some don't. You have these kind of setbacks, and it's a great learning opportunity. Once you achieve step 3, after a series of experiments, or maybe the first one even, you build another target condition and you start experimenting again. Now, what you see here is a couple of dots between the third and the first step, and those are the continuation of target conditions. leading eventually to our challenge. So that is the happy path scenario, if you want to see it this way, that we're stepping closer and closer towards our challenge. Now, when I saw this pattern, I was like, wow, if we're organizing a transformation like this, if we are introducing business agility, if I use this tool as a scrum master, even at the end of a retrospective, if there is an organizational impediment, I can use that as a direction. There's so many opportunities to include Agile Kata thinking into an organization. I was like, it's truly universal. We're still exploring, we're still hearing back from organizations out there using it. And we're now seeing teams that used to be Scrum teams. I have to say used to, because they're still having elements of Scrum, right? But they have departed from the framework. They have now introduced additional things. They are like using mob AI. They're using more pair programming. They're using open space to organize their events for like a true cultural shift. And that's what's really around this kata. Now, within Agile Kata, there might be still a daily Scrum left over. There might be still a series of retrospectives possible. The coaching skills are still the same. However, they also include obviously some kata knowledge, which we teach in the courses. But what's important is here is that it is a very different approach. There is no sprint. There is not a time box of an iteration. You can certainly have one if you feel strongly about it, but there's also arguments and thinking against that. So there's a vast opportunity for introducing this in a very big transformation, or also on a very small team level. And that's what I find so interesting here about this. And we saw product development is very common as a team process. We see organizations now that are using Agile Kata instead of Scrum, right? But those are teams that have many of them, not all of them, have made the transition through Scrum to that step. But we see teams actually stepping with the Agile Kata forward, possibly achieving something. What we saw before in Joe's presentation about the speed, right? So for some teams, to just take the guardrails off and go full speed on what they're trying to achieve for their organization. The Agile Kata could be that tool for you. So what's very interesting is that the Agile Kata is cultural change. And when you look at culture, culture is the sum of the behavior of the individuals within your organization. And if you're changing how one person is working and one team is working, you're starting like team by team to to create a new culture. There's not a top-down cultural change. It's like it's done grassroots with Agile Kata, step by step, team by team. There's coaching necessary. Obviously, there's a lot of experimentation necessary and a ton of self management and self organization. And I think that is what the link is to Tesla and Joe's work between us, is that I see such synergies in the way of how teams reshape and form, mob and dynamic reteaming, liberating structures and so forth. So there's so many things that goes so nicely along with Agile Kata that I can only invite you to give it a shot and give it a try.